Alright, so hi, welcome to this video. In this video I will review a book called In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Ouspensky. I have prepared here on my screen a list of notes from chapter 1, which are the same notes as presented in the table of contents. So I will go through each of those notes and review what happened there, and after that, in the second part, I will share with you my thought process which appeared when I read this chapter. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, this book is about the author. It's written from the standpoint of the author, P.D. Ouspensky, and he talks about his search for the miraculous as he describes it. So he talks about his personal journey of spiritual growth, I would say. So first of all, we should say when this happened and when the author lived. So a little words about the author. Well, I don't know this now. I don't know where he's from, but the book starts at approximately 1914. So at the beginning of World War I, and the author is a Russian guy. And up to this point, 1914, he was already in search, but he came to the conclusion that there is always a contradiction in everything, but he wants to know the truth. No, he suspects that there is a truth beyond contradictions, and that's what he calls the miraculous. Later on, he also describes that he describes as what influenced his decision of picking the word miraculous, and not an underestimated influence, he said, was due to him thinking that the higher knowledge has got to do with some kind of miracle. So that's an influence of why he chose the term miraculous. All right. And then, so up to this point, he was already searching. He found lots of contradictions, and now his journey, well, his journey. So he was at the time coming from a journey from India and other countries, which I now don't remember, and was returning to Russia, where I think St. Petersburg, where he met first a guy called Churchiev. Well, because I don't want to pronounce this name now, I will call him Chi. He is also referred as Chi in the book. So there he first met Chi. Well, he also described how circumstances arranged such that he met Chi. I don't know yet if this is important or will become important later in the book, so I will mention it now. Well, the author was working as a journalist, and well, in the newspaper agency, he receives, well, as a journalist, he receives notices for some events such that he can choose to write on them or not. So he received a notice about a I don't know, I think it was a ballet class. But I can't recall now how that led to meeting Chi, unfortunately. You see, my memory is extremely bad at the moment, and I hope I can improve this, among other things, which are bad at the moment. But anyway, so this notice of the ballet class, it played an important role, but I don't know how. It led to him meeting Chi, but they met in a cafe, small cafe, and he got his first impression on Chi. He referred to him as a distinguished man, so he had a presence going with him that pronounced him, that draw attention to him, that let you feel there's something special about this man. So that's how he described it. And the first talk, then he had the first talk with G. They started with G's opinion on schools, and it is described as well, he explained that a group is necessary for advancement on the path, whatever the path may be, because he stressed that one individual alone can't achieve anything of significance. So that's why a group is important. On the path, and probably also on in general. Okay. Anyway, so then they went from groups to G's group, and the only thing I recall from there is that he asked G, so he is the author, so Ouspensky asked G why he charges money for his courses. I believe he said courses for his students, but unfortunately I'm not sure anymore. But they had to pay some kind of fee in one way or the other. And he said, you only value something, anything, if you have to pay for it, if you have to sacrifice something for it. Well, sacrifice is now my own interpretation. So he just said pay for it. Yeah. Well, then it's written here, glimpses of truth. And unfortunately I can't recall what they were discussing there. So we move on. So then they parted again, and after some time they had further meetings and talks. So next they talked about that we already covered. Now comes a more important question. Well, for me, important at least. he asked if he's going to be a student of G, what his obligations were and what his obligations would be, and the question of secrecy. So, because he was a journalist, publisher, he was afraid that G might not want him to share what he've learned, what he has learned, and that would be a showstopper for him, because he couldn't accept such requirement. Fortunately, G explained in an interesting way to him that it's okay and he can share, but only with the condition that he is only allowed to share what he fully understood. I think it was fully understood, so that would be judgment made by himself, and it was not understood correctly, which in the view of G, which would mean G would have to approve of him sharing. So that's what I remember. So P was happy with this proposal and accepted this condition. But G also explained that when someone is in the early stages of their path, you can't expect them to not share, to not divulge anything. So that's because you have multiple personalities inside you. He said like that, or he said basically multiple personalities. And he said one of them could promise you something and the other one wouldn't see themselves obliged to this promise. So that's also why he said that I believe he said that you have to reach a certain level of attainment before anything of significance is shared with you. All right. Then G mentioned there's a difference between philosophy, theory, and practice. And he said that the terms shouldn't be understood in the traditional way, but had a different meaning, but he wasn't explaining what that is. And he linked each of them to a school, I believe. They were theory, unfortunately I forgot. So then he explained, let's move on. Then he explained how his system was found. Well, let's go now to the, I believe, most significant point in this first chapter. G proclaimed that man is a machine governed by external influences and reacting basically only to impulses. He refers also to such people as automata, and that's why nobody does anything, but everything just happens. It happens in the same way as it starts to rain because there's a temperature change. So like that temperature isn't saying, like the clouds don't choose now to change the temperature to produce rain. No, it just happens to them. And in the same way, circumstances and also just happen to humans, and their actions again just happen, like rain is falling. You might wonder now, what about my will? I can choose to raise my right hand at any moment, and that was my own choice. His argument is that me speaking about free will triggered this impulse in me to raise this hand. And the impression I have of me making a deliberate decision is also just happening in my experience. This experience was not created willfully, but it was just observed. So this is, I believe, his argument. Period. But I don't know whether he excludes himself or the masters who attained a certain level he also sees them in the same way, or if he thinks that there are indeed some people which are free and can choose deliberately. So the author then tells G that he is interested in facts, provable facts. He was also thinking again about miracles, and G promised him there will be facts, but only later. Alright? Then they moved on to wars, and he asked whether wars can be stopped, and then she explained that everybody thinks, or quite often people assume that things could have been done differently. But in reality, he says things always happen in just the way they could have happened, exactly as they could have happened. So he says that this is an illusion, that you might that one thinks that people could have done something differently. And then they talked a little bit about the planets, the moon, the earth, and she said that planets and the moon are living beings. He explained that the earth was once to the moon what the sun is now to the earth. So basically he said that the relationship between Earth, between Sun, Earth, and Moon is a hierarchical one, and he said that with Moon at the lowest and Sun at the highest, and he said that Sun is the highest developed and Moon the lowest, and that the Earth is now to the Moon what was once the Sun. No, the Sun is now to the Earth what was once the Earth to the Moon. Yeah, this already raises some questions, of course, but we will talk about this in the second part of this video. And now we move to the final point, which is the difference between subjective and objective art, and he proclaimed that he proclaimed that the difference between subjective and objective art is that in subjective art subjective art will produce different impressions, trigger different emotions in humans, in the viewer of the artwork, whereas subjective art will always trigger exactly the same impressions and emotions under the additional requirement that two people, the additional requirement that the people have to be on the same spiritual level. So assuming they are on the same state of being, let's say, they will receive the same emotions and impressions from an objective piece of artwork. And he said the Sphinx, for example, is an objective piece of artwork. And he explained why they can produce the same, and it's because there is precise mathematics as to proportions and angles of shapes which are responsible to trigger kind of emotion. Right, this was the last point for this video, so for chapter 1. So we will cut the video at this point, and in the next part I will give my thought process as it runs through my head while subjecting myself to those points. Alright, so see you next time. Bye.